Hey, howdy, and welcome to the Big and Bright podcast. It's just me again, just Justice James. Nick decided to let himself get sick, visit family, and everything, so he couldn't make it. He's being really selfish lately, so we may have to look into if Nick's even going to be on the show anymore. We'll get into it. But speaking of Nick, I just want to take some time to remember how wrong Nick was. If you remember from last episode, Nick said TCU would cover and they would win by 5 to 6 points. Boy, howdy, was he wrong. Not only did TCU not cover, they didn't even get close to winning. They lost 65-7. They didn't even show up. I don't know what happened from the week before to that week, but Georgia just rolled all over them, and they never had a shot since the starting buzzer. So I just love I just take pleasure in Nick being wrong and getting to mention it. And man, if I could put our text messages up on here, I'd have to edit some, but I'd put them up there to show how Nick was just mad that he was this dead wrong, and I was just laughing the entire time. Anyways, before I get to any of the show, I want to remind you to like, share, subscribe, share, ring the bell. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. Follow us on Twitter, Big and Bright Pod. We're also on Instagram, but I really don't use that a lot. So please you can follow us, but I don't really know how to use it that well. So just like, share, subscribe. Please. We need it. It's great. The first story I want to talk about is to do with a bill that's currently looking like it may actually pass the House and Senate. A lot of bills have been submitted to the legislature for this session. I think over 1,000 bills have been presented, so a lot of them are just fodder. What I mean by that is that senators or House members will put up a specific bill that makes them look good, like virtue signaling, or a bill specifically only for their district that they're wanting the whole state to pass. It's a great way to go back to your constituents and say, look, I tried. Well, we didn't get the votes. It happens. Darn. So it's a great tool to use for politicians. So I imagine that 3/4 of that is probably what it is. The other ones are probably actually consistent of being with the whole state or something that's actually a priority. But this bill that got passed is it's not passed. I'm sorry. It's been submitted to the Senate. It's called SB 147. It's looking into banning foreigner entities buying land, whether that be an individual or a company. This was submitted by Senator Lois Kolkhorst. I'm probably saying that wrong. I do apologize. It's from Brenham, Texas. This would ban citizens, governments, and entities of China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia from buying land in Texas. Now, this is filed after we had a bill passed last session during the special sessions, which was unanimously passed, called the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act, which bans all contracts or agreements with foreign-owned companies related to critical infrastructure in Texas. Greg Abbott signed that into law in 2021. Now we're going one step further of not only no contracts, also you can't buy the land. Now, the reason why this would actually matter is because I believe last year we kind of noticed it. I'll give you an article from Texas Scorecard as well that was really looking into it. This Chinese general bought 138,000 acres of land just miles from an Air Force base in Val Verde County. What was he trying to do with that land? Why was he buying it so in close proximity to Air Force? Well, he's a Chinese general. I'm going to take a wild guess. He was reporting back to his boss, Mr. Xi. So we don't want that to happen because kind of giving spies free access to look at all of our stuff and report it back to their bosses. I don't like that. But apparently, currently in Texas, 4.7 million acres is owned by foreign entities or foreign individuals. That shouldn't be allowed. That should have never been allowed. But here we are. this bill would actually stop any future purchases for entities or companies that are owned, and that's a great thing because we need it to not happen, and we got to start somewhere. Because my only really criticism about this bill is that it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go back to the previous purchases of land by foreign entities or foreign citizens. But then again, we can't just take land unless it's eminent domain, and the state likes to use that whenever it wants because it requires just compensation. So I don't know if we'd have to buy it back, how it would happen. Should they even have rights since they're not a citizen of this country buying land in I mean, it's really weird. Some that say this is really rude, this is crude to foreigners because we're a land of immigrants. We should be allowing this. Well, no. Try any other country. Most of them will not let you purchase land if you're not a citizen of that country or a dual citizen, especially China. So no, we're going to play the exact same game they play on us, and for good reason. If I'm a Chinese citizen, I wouldn't want an American citizen so close to my air bases or anything like that. Well, we don't want the same thing. So tough noogies, as some will say. But Abbott has actually he has actually come out and said that he would actually sign this. He tweeted it out because apparently that's how, politicians now get their information out. But he tweeted it out that he would sign this bill if it passes the House and Senate immediately. So there's already support from Abbott. The House and the Senate, or the Senate at least, seems to have some support. The House is only real monkey wrench, but then again, Republicans vastly outnumber the Democrats, so this does not even have to be done bipartisanly. I wish it would. I wish Democrats would sign on to this, and maybe they will. But as we all know, the constant battle is one side hates the other, vice versa. Anything you want, I likely will vote against, and that's just how it goes. So we'll see if it actually gets passed in this session. I imagine it will because it seems like a pressing issue. So we'll find out. But speaking of the Senate, if you don't know, every 10 years, redistricting happens for states. Well, 2020 was now 3 years ago, but it was finalized, and now we have a session, not a special session, a session to talk about the redistricting. Well, we had all the votes that happened in November. Because of those votes, senators are now in play. The Senate has to be staggered. That way, every 2 years, new ones are voted in, and some remain current. Otherwise, the Senate would be completely vacant or have completely new inaugurations every 4 years. That wouldn't be a way to keep stable. We have to keep things moving, so we have to stagger them. Well, the only way to stagger them, especially after a redrawn maps, is to basically cast lots. Who gets the 2 year? Who gets the 4 year? Thus, if you were as a senator, you're elected for 4 years. But in a redistricting, there is basically an asterisk that says, unless it's this year and you happen to get the 2 year luck of the draw. Now, you would think there'd be some sophisticated type thing of how this would be done, but Texas just made it real simple. They had them all line up alphabetically with an envelope with a little capsule in it, and if it had an even number, you got 2 years. If you had an odd number, you got 4 years. It wasn't based on names. It was all laid out, and you picked the one. You basically, like a magician, pick a card. You picked your card. Luck of the draw. The odds were either in your favor or not in your favor. And I say it was done alphabetically because some would obviously try to wait and maybe maneuver and do the math in their head. There's an article that I'm going to share with this that had a guy basically in the back of the line kind of going through the math in his head going, well, I have this and this chance of getting this one. So let me see. And he kind of made his best guess. But either way, it's still just an envelope, and you had no idea which one it was in until you opened it, of course. So 17 senators got the luck of the draw. And the others got to do a 2 year term. And some are actually from the House, and they've now been voted into the Senate. So they're used to campaigning every 2 years. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. In reality, because we only meet every other year, it just means you went from one session to 2 sessions, or you went to just one session. and you have to go try to get yourself reelected again. It's not that big of a deal, but this is what has to happen every 10 years. So the senators knew what was going on. Most are used to it, and it's not that big of a deal. I just thought it'd be something kind of cooler of how they would be selected, but I guess it's pretty efficient and pretty fair to just do an envelope, a blind envelope, and you pick one, and that's the one you get. So that's how it's happening now for the Texas legislative session. There's other bills, like I said, but nothing's really kind of been commented on by Abbott. So until that really happens, it's kind of all in committees, and just because it's in committee doesn't mean it's going to make the light. Does not mean it's going to see the light of day afterwards. It could just be something that they argue about for the sake of arguing and then move on. So we'll see. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is Texas has a surplus. Boy, howdy do we. We have a surplus. Our wallet is fat. We can make it rain anywhere we want. We have $33 billion. Let's see what we should do with it. I'll share an article. I apologize if it's behind the paywall. I've shared it a few times with different people because we happen to make the list, and I'll get to our answer later on. But sometimes it happens, sometimes it not. So I'll just discuss the highlights that I thought were funny and some that were serious. So we'll see. But the legislator is likely going to put much of the surplus into lowering property taxes for homeowners. This is what says in the article. And many have talked about infrastructure projects such as the grid and expanding access to high-speed internet. I don't know about the internet, but in Governor Greg Abbott's inauguration yesterday, he did mention that this legislative session will be focused around the surplus and mainly focusing on parental rights and parental rights in schools and public safety. It didn't expand on that. No idea what that means. Just kind of seems like a new buzzword that people use based on Virginia and all this critical race theory stuff. But he also mentioned that the surplus would be utilized to possibly going for the infrastructure, which means the grid. So he didn't mention really about property taxes, but he did mention the grid. Again, just because a politician mentions it doesn't mean anything's going to happen. So we'll see. Politicians certainly love to talk a lot, but when it comes to action, you see a huge drop off. So we'll see what he actually means by this. But there were some interesting answers. And this reporter, he offered it for anybody, for serious or funny, whichever. And we actually got chosen. Like I said, I'll get to our answer soon. I was just surprised we got chosen because there's so many answers, but he apparently liked it enough. One person wrote, lawmakers should use the money to settle one of the most pressing issues facing Texas in modern times. Who has the best tacos? Now, I know I may have triggered some people just now because you're already screaming, we do. Well, we don't know. This is a pressing issue. I am with this Reddit user. This issue should be resolved by Texas. We should have senators and representatives going across the state, city to city, finding out if it's a restaurant, food truck, a hole in the wall, anybody who really does have the best tacos. And then that issue will be resolved and people will know where they should vacation in the summer to get the best tacos. Now, another answer, which I thought was also really good, was a mile-high statue of Walker, Texas Ranger. I'm fully behind that. I'm fully behind that because we need an ode to Walker, Texas Ranger right there in the Capitol. Just watching us, keeping us safe. And we need to have it have action abilities so that way if something does happen, he can do a nice roundhouse kick and get out the crime and save the people. So I'm fully behind this one as well. Another was a 2-mile long Buc-ee's. Now, if you've ever been to a Buc-ee's, it's pretty awesome. But have you ever been there and said, I wish it had more? I know I have. Therefore, we should also do this Buc-ee's for 2 miles long. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't care. We'll think of that stuff later. But we need to start implementation of how this is happening. is like a quarter mile just barbecue and beef jerky, because that sounds like heaven to me. So we should totally do this. Hope Texas is listening, and I hope these issues, these very serious issues, are going to be on Texas's plate for how we spend this surplus. One person also said, buy Oklahoma and call it Texas Junior. Now, I'm all for renaming things of Texas, but everyone knows this would just be a lie. Everyone would know the truth of, I know it says Texas Junior, but we all know it's Oklahoma. We all know Oklahoma sucks. Now, to our answer that we gave, every child in Texas deserves their own pony. And here's why. If every child had a pony and started training young, we could vastly improve our already amazing skills of our cowboys and cowgirls in the Texas rodeo. This is also an important issue that Texas needs to resolve. We need to have more athletic feats by our cowboys and cowgirls in Texas rodeo, because we all know if you're a Texan, you've been to a rodeo and you enjoy it. If not, get out of Texas. That's just Texas law. Sorry. So we need to start doing a lot of these issues that these people have brought up. They may have presented them as funny answers, but they're serious issues that Texas needs to solve. So I hope that, the legislator will actually look into this and, I guess, focus a little bit on the grid, but mostly the taco thing. Remember the taco thing. That's an important issue. Now, I hope you liked this episode. I know it's a short one. I'm sure you're happy it's a short one, but without a counterpart, it's kind of hard to have a conversation with somebody. So I'm just going to end it here, because I do have a few other subjects, but Nick said I couldn't go forever. So I won't go forever, and I'll actually respect his wishes. So we are the stars at night, and we are big and bright. We'll see you next week.